Hello, so I wanted to talk about the new Health album, Rat Wars. If you're not familiar with the band Health, imagine 9 Inch Nails. That's it. Health is a Twitter meme account that is masquerading as a band and has done so for about 15 years now. I would say that their big breakthrough was probably the Max Payne 3 soundtrack, which is phenomenal. I should know because I'm on like my 5th playthrough of the game in like 3 weeks, so expect a Max Payne 3 video essay at some point probably. Their early stuff was a little bit too noisy and punky for my taste, but when Death Magic came out in 2015, that's when they really came into their own. Ever since then, pretty much everything they've done has kind of scratched the same itch as 9 Inch Nails. It's been that kind of poppy, industrial sort of thing, which I love. And that's always how anyone describes the band, is they compare them to 9 Inch Nails. And that's how the band describes the band, is they compare themselves to 9 Inch Nails. I think that if you were to draw a Venn diagram of Health fans and 9 Inch Nails fans and see where the overlap is, I think it's more than fair to say that the circle of Health fans sits squarely in the middle of the circle of 9 Inch Nails fans, because everyone who loves Health also loves 9 Inch Nails. Or I'm sure there's like one psycho out there who doesn't like 9 Inch Nails, and if you don't like 9 Inch Nails, it's like, why? It's like, what do you hate good music or something? Whenever Rat Wars dropped, Health posted a video to their YouTube account that had a little bit of footage from the first date of their tour in America last year, and it just so happened to be the date that I was at. And so I spent like 15 minutes trying to find myself and my buddy Josh in the crowd, and for reference, here's a picture of us at a Purity Ring concert. Do you see us? Enhance, 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 enhance. There we are. That's Josh and I was still blonde at this point, and so anyways, going back to Health, I spent way too long trying to look at this footage and trying to find us. And I was like, are these guys us? Are we them? I don't think so. I don't think it is. And I don't think we're anywhere to be seen in the video, but we were on that side of the stage. And this has nothing to do with the rest of the video, but I just had to share it because I don't know where else to put this. I've liked Health for a long time, but it wasn't until recently that I actually started to love them. Whenever the Children of Sorrow single dropped, I just played that crap on loop. And so, here we are now, and I'm a hardcore fan because of that. In the video announcement for the album, they have like a partial music video for that song, and it features the band playing in front of various screens that have anime catgirl dancers, and I think that's great. And then they came out with another video for their song Sicko, which is on this album also, and it features a bunch of 80s footage, essentially, like 80s horror footage, I guess. And then people just started watching it on Weird Stuff, and so there are videos of people watching the 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 video. And it's all a bit much, but I love it. I'm a big fan of it. I bought a couple shirts from the band and they sent me some condoms, so that's cool, I guess. Thank you. Apparently the band just sends protection out to anyone who orders shirts from them, and I think that's incredibly bold because it seems to imply that the band thinks that the people who are listening to them are actually at a good point in their lives and aren't completely alone, and sad. Because if you're listening to Health, you're probably not in the best place in life, but I don't know, maybe I'm projecting, I don't know. The reason I say all that is because pretty much every lyric that comes out of the singer's mouth is something nihilistic or misanthropic or unhappy or depressed or cynical or bitter or angry or sad, or you get the point. But I think that pretty consistently across the board, hope isn't really anywhere to be found in a lot of their records. Going back to the 9 Inch Nails comparison, they do have kind of poppy stuff, even off of Death Magic. They have some stuff that's like pretty upbeat sounding. I'm thinking of Life, but lyrically it's never in a good place. It's never happy. So Health's first couple albums, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't listened to them that much. They're just more noisy than their other stuff. It sounds like a completely different band in a lot of ways. And I absolutely adore Die Slow. That song is just phenomenal, but I just haven't given those two records enough of a chance. Then there's the Max Payne 3 soundtrack. Then they came out with Death Magic, and Death Magic is really kind of where they started to lean into that industrial feel. Then they came out with Volume 4, Slaves of Fear, which is a much heavier album. I think there's definitely some heaviness to Death Magic. I'm thinking of Stonefist in particular. But at the same time, it's not a metal album. It's not as abrasive or punishing as Slaves of Fear is. And I don't mean to imply that, oh yeah, this is the most crazy experimental music ever, before anyone jumps on me in the comments section. It's like, yeah, bro, I saw Prurient live, it's whatever, I know. But I still think it's fair to say that Slaves of Fear is a pretty harrowing listen. I think it's definitely a much darker album than Death Magic, which is already a super, super dark album. But Slaves of Fear was an album that didn't really kind of click with me until recently, if I'm being completely honest. I've always loved Black Static, and that might still be my favorite Health song. But that entire album, I think, paints an image of life that is just kind of dingy and disgusting and dark and meaningless and pointless. It focuses on those shadowy aspects of life. It seems to lean into the fact that there are so many strange questions about life that we'll never receive answers to. And it's an album that is obsessed with death, I think. Specifically death as a concept and how it fits into our understanding of life. How does the ever-looming presence of death weigh on our psyches and on our understanding of life and where we fit into the grand scheme of things? It's an album that's obsessed with that and obsessed with the idea of a higher purpose or a lack of a higher purpose, and it's obsessed with finding meaning. And sonically, it's just a much heavier album than Death Magic. You have these really loud, heavy chugging guitars throughout the album. There's some trap-style beats at certain points of the album. It's not a trap album by any means, but it kind of reminds me of Fever Daydream by the Black Queen, with how it utilizes trap samples in a different setting than that kind of style of music. I saw one review that compared Death Magic to Pretty Hate Machine by Nine Inch Nails, because both albums are more poppy, both albums are more catchy, and then the same review compared Slaves of Fear to Broken by Nine Inch Nails in the sense that both are industrial metal records. And so I think it's fair that whenever the band announced Rat Wars, they described it as the downward spiral for people with more than 2 monitors and a vitamin D deficiency. But the problem that I have with this description is that the downward spiral for people with more than 2 monitors and a vitamin D deficiency is the downward spiral. That album already exists, so it's already filling that niche. But I get what they were going for, and it's a tongue-in-cheek description. It's not taken seriously. Or at least it shouldn't be taken seriously by anyone. Because this album, Rat Wars, is not the downward spiral. It's not as experimental or strange or weird as that record is, but I think it's absolutely phenomenal. I should note, by the way, that in between Rat Wars and Slaves of Fear, in the 5-year gap between those records, Health put out Disco 4 Part 1 and Part 2. Those 2 records are great because they are collaborative records. Basically, Health collabed with a different band on every song on the album, except for the opening and closing songs. And I think it's just an absolutely brilliant move because you have people who may not have normally listened to your band checking out your band because of the fact that it's like, oh, they collaborated with Lamb of God. Oh, they collaborated with The Soft Moon, or with 100 Gex, or with Nine Inch Nails. They collaborated with Poppy and Ghostmane. Or my buddy Josh, who I mentioned earlier, he's a huge Shoo Shoo fan, and so they did a song with him. And what makes those 2 records special is the fact that Health decided to collaborate with just anyone. Health will just collab with anyone. So you have metal bands, you have rap artists, you have alternative artists and indie rock artists and post-punk guys. And so I think that Health kind of took all of these different influences. I think they took all these collaborations and they kind of learned something from all of it, and so they took that understanding into Rat Wars. And so as a result, I think Rat Wars is a different album than Death Magic and Slaves of Fear. I think it makes sense as a follow-up. If you were to hear it, you would go, oh yeah, this is the same band. It's not anything crazy, it's not anything out of left field, but I think it's just a really freaking good record. I think it's their best record, easily. The first song on there is called Demigods, and it's kind of this big epic sounding track. It's not one of my favorites, if I'm being completely honest, but it's still really excellent. The second track is called Future of Hell, and that's one of the most metal titles that I can think of, but it has these really shrill synths, and it just sounds really crazy, and it sounds like it's a bunch of weird noises that are just kind of jammed together, but into a very catchy song, aka it is what industrial should be. It's a song where when you first start listening to it, it sounds really weird, but then the further you get into the song, like within 30 seconds of listening to the song, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. This song, Future of Hell, actually reminds me a bit of Ahead of Ourselves off of the Nine Inch Nails album Bad Witch, which is another song I love, just because of the shrill, loud guitars on that album. Also, they put out a video for this song that has the rats from Dusk HD, which is great. And like I said, they're a Twitter meme account, and so if you just go to their Twitter page, it's just all rat posts. By the way, I almost forgot, I don't know how I almost forgot, but they made a video game to advertise this. They just made Rat War Survivors, which is a thinly veiled reference to Vampire Survivors, and it's more fun than you would think, because honestly, even in rat form, Vampire Survivors is still a lot of fun. It's pretty funny because I haven't really seen a band do this before. I haven't seen a band advertise an album the way that Health has advertised this album. It's hard for me to think of another band that's in Health's league where they are able to play with a lot of major league players. Again, they got Nine Inch Nails for a track. Again, they got The Neighborhood, and they got Lamb of God. They have no problem finding these collaborators who are just huge, big names. But at the same time, if you look at the way that they run their business and they connect with their fans and talk to people, it doesn't feel like it's a big band. It doesn't feel like some kind of corporation. It just feels like some dudes who are on their phones, which I think is exactly what it is. I think that's what the Twitter account is. I think it's just a couple of the band members being like, whatever, post the freaking weird memes. Yeah, who cares? And so I think that puts them in a really kind of weird and unique place, in a special place. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that they're able to capture the best of both worlds. Then the third track on the album, Hateful, is actually featured in Ultra Kill. If you go to the Cyber Grind, it's kind of a weird collaboration, but I love it. And I love the shirt that they made for it. And I bought the shirt because it's like so funny to me that they're just like, yeah, you have the robots and then you just have a black and white still image of the band, and I don't know, it's just silly. It's silly, but it's the exact kind of thing that makes you love the band, because it's just like, that they were just texting and they were like, wouldn't it be funny if we just slapped our faces next to the robots from Ultra Kill? And it was like, oh, that would be funny. Let's do it. Hateful is a song that's like super upbeat and bassy, but I didn't really dig it that much, if I'm being completely honest, until I heard it within the context of the album, because of the fact that they chopped off the outro to that song, Of All Else, it's called, and it's just a different track. It's just track 4. And once I heard Hateful and then Of All Else together, something clicked. I don't know what, but something clicked, and I'm just like, yeah, the song's awesome. I love it. Track 5 is Crack Metal, and if we are going back to the Downward Spiral as a point of reference, this is the March of the Pig style track. It's super fast, it's super shrill. It took me a couple listens to get into, but I dig it now. Track 6 is called Unloved, and it has the most brutal chorus I have ever heard, which is, "It's not my fault you were unloved as a child." And I don't know, dude, that just, yeah, I don't know. I was shocked when I heard it. I was shocked because it's like this weird thing where it's like just so cold and mean, but at the same time, sometimes the line makes more sense than I wish it did. So that is side A of the album. And so if you have a turntable, then this is when you flip the record over and you put side B on, and then you try to put the needle on, and then you freaking drop it and scratch the entire record. So the first song on there is Children of Sorrow. I mentioned earlier it has the anime cat girls. This is probably the most obviously metal song on the record. It does feature a guitarist from one of the guys from Lamb of God, and so that's why. The guitar riff is very thrashy sounding, I think, but I think Health is able to bring in some kind of dance elements to it. But all in all, I think it's still a pretty accessible song, if I'm being completely honest. Track 8 is Sicko, which features a sample of the Godflesh song Like Rats, which I think they only sampled because they wanted to call the album Rat Wars, or maybe that is why they called the album Rat Wars, is because they were like, yeah, we're gonna sample Godflesh. But Rat Wars is actually a song off of Slaves of Fear, and so I don't know how exactly that song title fits as the album title, but I think it's really cool sounding, so I think that's probably why they did it. I think it might just serve to make the connection between the two albums, Rat Wars and Slaves of Fear, that much more tangible. But Sicko is heavy. Sicko is great. Sicko might be my favorite song off the record. Maybe. Because it's like not even 2.5 minutes long, and there's just a heaviness to it. I don't even know another way to describe it, because it's Godflesh, so it's like, yeah, of course it's heavy, but I don't know, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like Sicko is heavier than the original song. I feel like it just hits harder, and I don't know, feel free to disagree if you want. Then next, there's Ashamed of Being Born, which is the outro. Like Hateful, it was chopped off. It's another one of my favorite songs on the album. Really, like, the entire album is great. Ashamed was the 4th song that was dropped off the album after Hateful, Sicko, and Children of Sorrow. And I think it was one of those moments where I heard it and I was like, oh yeah, this entire album is going to be something special. It was when I realized that the album was actually going to be great. I think it and Unloved are both pretty similar in terms of feel, because both are kind of upbeat and dancey. Neither one is super heavy. Both of them, I think, kind of feel more like Death Magic than Slaves of Fear. But the outro to this song, of Being Born, is actually super nice. There's some really beautiful guitar, and I think lyrically it just kind of goes back to some of those Slaves of Fear ideas, just the focus on death and the length of life. The penultimate track is DSM-5, which features a riff that sounds to me like Rammstein. It sounds more Rammstein than Rammstein. Like, I listened to this song and then I went back and listened to Du Hast by Rammstein, and this song sounds more like how Du Hast sounds in my head than Du Hast does. So I don't know what that means. I played the song for my dad and I was like, what song does this remind you of? Because I was expecting him to say Du Hast, but instead he said The Hand That Feeds by Nine Inch Nails, and I'm like, I don't Sure, I guess. But it features a pretty great chugging guitar riff. The outro to the song is actually a reprise of the very first song of the record, Demigods, which I think is a nice kind of touch to bring things together. And then the final song on the album is called Don't Try, which, as you can see, this album is very upbeat. It's very uplifting. It's very happy. Yeah. And it sounds about as happy as you might think that a song called Don't Try would sound. This song is cool because there's a callback to Children of Sorrow, because Children of Sorrow talks about not being able to remember something. Don't Try talks about having remembered something and being worse off for it. So I think with that, I think that with some other lyrical references, I think that with the reprise of Demigods, all these things just kind of come together and cause the album to feel very cohesive and whole and complete. I think it's obvious that a lot of thought and care and effort went into this album as an album, not as just some songs, not as a collection of songs, but some thought went into the album and how everything would fit together. As a whole, I don't think this album is as abrasive or as punishing of a listen as Slaves of Fear is. And again, I'm aware that Slaves of Fear is not the most punishing record in the world, blah, blah, no, whatever. I know that it's not the least accessible thing ever, but I still think that Slaves of Fear is more difficult than Rat Wars is. I think Slaves of Fear is even a heavier record, maybe, but I think Rat Wars is better. I think Rat Wars is the best thing that Health has ever done. I think it's able to combine basically everything that makes the band great into one record. You have songs that are kind of poppy and upbeat and danceable. You have songs that are very noisy and harsh and abrasive. You have songs that are heavy and chugging and loud. And oftentimes you have everything all together in one song. So I think this is the best Nine Inch Nails record since the last Nine Inch Nails record. I think it's the best Nine Inch Nails record since Bad Witch. I'm really happy this album exists. I'm really happy this band exists, and I'm happy that I've been able to get into them like I have. I think if you're a Nine Inch Nails fan, I say check out this album. If you're not a Nine Inch Nails fan, obviously you haven't heard the band, because that's the only reasonable excuse to not be a fan of the band, is you just haven't listened to them. So I would say go check out Nine Inch Nails, and definitely go check out this record. I think it's probably my album of the year. I think it's my favorite album to come out in 2023. I love that Queens of the Stone Age record in Times New Roman, but I think I like Rat Wars a little bit more just because I like Nine Inch Nails. But really, in spite of all the Nine Inch Nails comparisons from both myself and other people, this is not a Nine Inch Nails album. This is a Health album. This is not a Nine Inch Nails ripoff band. This is a band doing their own thing. And that is what makes it special. Is sure, they're influenced by a lot of other bands, but at the core of it, they have their own sound. I think when you hear this band, you know it's them. When I hear one of their songs, I wouldn't really confuse it for anyone else. And so really, I'm happy this record exists. I haven't been this excited or in love with a record for a long time. So thank you. Yeah. So I think that's all I have to say about Rat Wars. Don't let the rats get you down, I guess. That's all I got. So thank you and have a nice night. Bye.